Hey, I'm Brian with Lil B's. We are creating new install videos. They're a lot longer than normal, but we feel that a more detailed instruction with all the key points in it is a way to show our customers exactly how to install our product, exactly how we expect it to be installed. In our videos, there will be labeled chapters so that way as you're going through it, you can skip forward. Let's say you're not putting lights in your bumper, you can skip the lights portion. You can skip the winch portion if you want, go straight to the install portion of the video. You can shorten it up pretty quickly, obviously. We're just trying to make it to where you get all the information you need to install the bumper properly and the way that we designed the bumper. There's been a lot in the past where we've just kind of jumped around here and there installed, but this should hopefully be our turning point for installation videos to give you guys a quality product with quality instructions to go along with it. I'm Brian with Lil B's Fabrication. We're located in Conifer, Colorado. We build all of our products here on site. We have a crew and a nice manufacturing facility up here. We build all of our bumpers. This is our newest bumper. It's our GX460 bumper. It'll actually fit all the way from 2010 to 2023 GX460s. So pre-facelift all the way through. We're gonna show you mounting the Badlands 12K winch to the inside of the bumper here. We're gonna show you how the process goes with that. We are also going to add some Baja XL Sports to the light bracket, and then we're gonna show you our side lights. Side lights basically either replacing or adding on to your ditch lights to give you a nice side view if you're on a trail and you need to see what's going on beside you. This should be our prep to get a bumper installed, and we'll basically be getting everything ready and then moving on to the install. So we have customer supplied XL Sports. We got a Badlands 12K winch for it. We got some S1s here that we're gonna go ahead and mount in the side mounts on the bumper. The bumper comes capable of handling 3 lights per side in the front facing area, and then another set of lights facing the side for like basically your ditch lights. We call them side lights on this. So we're gonna show you taking off the control box, mounting the winch, getting everything set up. We use our hardware to mount the winch. We use our hardware to mount the fairlead. Everything that we're doing is done with USS threaded bolts. So everything we're wanting you to do is to use our hardware so that way we don't have any issues with what we've threaded onto the bumper itself. So we'll get started. All right, when you open up your Baja box, it's going to come with all this hardware here to bolt it to the bumper and to bolt the bracket to the light. When we're working on the Bajas, we have our mounting system is above the light versus below the light. So when you mount it, you're mounting it with the bezel upside down. You're gonna want to, either before you mount it or after you get it mounted, you're gonna want to pull these 4 screws and flip the bezel over. You can also flip the lens over, and then everything is exactly the same as it was intended by Baja as far as your driving lens and everything else. We're gonna start off with the lenses, or with the brackets. You have to add these little guys here, which makes it super fun to get it mounted. It helps them pivot, and then you just take the extra slack. You throw another washer on your bolt. And we could, if we wanted to, mount the bracket upside down, but it really takes away a lot of the adjustability of the light itself. So it's better to mount the bracket the way the bracket's supposed to go, and then just flip the lens cover. It's a little bit of extra work, but in the end, it makes everything work better as the manufacturer intended it. You just kind of get them to where you can get that bolt in there to slip that bottom washer back where it goes. It's not too bad. They leave just enough space, but it could be frustrating if you're too many install sodas in. Like right here. Yep, I missed it. See it? So we'll pull that back out. We'll use this guy as a little way to push it. There we go. Now we're on it. So there's one of your brackets all installed. You see all the washers on the inside of it. Everything's set the way it's supposed to be. And then we'll be able to add this to the bumper. I went ahead and tightened up these just a little snug. All these bolts have Loctite already on them. This little bit of yellow coating that's on here, that's Loctite. It's meant to keep it, a thread locker, whatever you want to call it. It's meant to keep it in there while you're running down the road. You're getting that vibration from your vehicle. But we're using a 7/16 socket on here for these Baja lights. Fits it real nice. Don't go crazy with it. You're threading into a piece of aluminum, so you don't want to overdo it and pull your threads. The Loctite or the thread locker is going to help you drastically to have to not worry about over tightening these bolts. So those are all tight right now. One pointer that I give for our bumper is when you're dealing with a lot of these light companies, they're throwing these tiny little flat washers in that don't honestly do a very good job of sitting on these slots that we have. What I've done is I'm using a 3/8 USS washer so that way it's gonna, no matter where on this slot it is, if it moves around, it's not gonna push on the slot either direction, and the washer's not gonna fall through for lack of coverage. So this is something that I do when I'm mounting lights on our bumpers to just try to help out with keeping everything where it needs to go. So there you have your big flat washer. You throw your nut on it. And you can do this with it on the truck if you're moving lights around. It's not a big deal. But basically what you have is you have a slot. The XL is only going to go so far over, but the XL does a really good job in this spot of filling the area in. If you want to go with another light, you go with a Squadron over here and an S2 or whatever lighting brand you're using. You're basically looking at a 5-inch light, a 3-inch light, and then a double stack, basically 2x3-inch light. So that's what we're basically dealing with here. I'm going to go ahead and snug this one down. Don't go too tight at first. You may still want to move the light around a little bit. Once you get it where you want it, you're happy with it, go ahead and snug it down all the way tight. Make sure you got that little bit of nylock right there catching enough of your bolt so where it's not going to wiggle loose on you. All right, I'm going to pick it up so you can get a good visual on what it looks like. Like I was saying, move it around, change your angle side to side within reason with the XLs. If you put a set of Squadrons in this same spot, you can scoot that Squadron all the way down to this end, back and forth. And we do have a double row on here, so if you don't like it set back some, you can push it to the front and have it sticking out a little bit more. We're going to go ahead and get the bracket mounted on this light. I want to just show you. So we're mounting the bracket the way the bracket's intended to be mounted. We're mounting the light upside down, basically, compared to what Baja intended. So our light bracket mounting system is from the top. So once we get it all put together and we get it mounted, this is going to be upside down, and so is this. But you take out the 4 bolts, you flip over the lens and the lens bezel, and everything appears the same from the front and operates and functions the same as it would. So to start off with, we get these little washers on there that they want us to use. These are basically little spacers, so that way when you go to pivot, you can still pivot properly. It's a little hard. It's kind of like wants to push them around while you're playing with it, but it's doable. Just got to be a little patient. Make sure you put a washer on your bolt. The bolts come with thread locker already on them. So when you go to tighten it up, don't go crazy with it. You are threading into a chunk of aluminum. You don't want to over tighten it and strip the threads out. So just kind of be gentle. Remember, the thread locker is there to help hold the light still. You don't have to make it super tight. You got your last one. This is always the hardest one, of course. Never goes easy. Shove the washer and push your bracket back a little bit. Shove the washer in as far as you can get it. Move your bracket back over the hole of the washer, and that'll help you when you go to put the bolt in to try and land on that screw hole. It's preferable to go ahead and tighten up with a ratchet. This is a 7/16 socket. I use a little 1/4 inch ratchet. These aren't massive bolts, so there's no reason to go crazy. I prefer not to use an impact on these, just because you never know how tight you're getting them with an impact. So it's better to go ahead and use something that you can kind of feel the bolt as it goes in, feel it stop on the bottom. You're not over here ramrodding through that aluminum like I talked to about before. I'm going to loosen them back up because I stayed a little out of sequence there. And this one actually needs, there we go. So got to get that guy in before you tighten it, because once you tighten it, the light's in the way. You're not going to be able to get that in anymore. Like I said, just snug them down. It's not a strongman competition. The bolts aren't made to withstand all your anger. There we go. All right, so the bolt's in, and we're going to go ahead and get it mounted to the bumper. All right, so to mount it to the bumper, like I said before, we're coming up from underneath. We get into this slot. So Baja sends, and most light companies will send these tiny little washers with it. If you start tightening down this tiny little washer on our slotted system, you're probably going to spread the slot out. It's going to get loose over time. It's probably not going to handle what you're needing it to handle. This is a decent investment. I mean, we're talking $400 and something for a set of these lights. So a little bit bigger washer on there, give it some coverage, give it some clamping room, and go ahead and get that set. All these lights, so for the XL, you're only going to get so much side-to-side movement because we only have so much room down there for these. If you did squadrons, and it's a 3-inch light basically, you'd be able to slide that squadron all the way over to here, all the way back. So you can put a pair of those, an S2, whatever you want. But to start off with an XL, it's a good starting point. It gets you a good light in your bumper to run either as your fog or as your off-road light, whatever you want it to be. But then you just tighten her all up. Everything sits nice and sturdy. Light's not going anywhere. We get a really nice profile on the light. We get a good light pattern off of it. You can either use these XLs as your fogs, use them as your driving lights, whatever you choose to do. The sports are not too bright, but the XL does come in a Pro and an R version. So yeah, options are out there to get as much lighting out of this bumper as you want. For the side light, we're going to go ahead and mount an S1 in here. You can get an S2 to fit in there fine. The diode stuff with the S2, or their SS2, I believe it's called, is a little bit tight, so it's not as adjustable. But you can go, they have, oops, yeah, and that one's gone. They have their little one pod that you can use. So yeah, I feel like that's more than enough for the 10, 12 feet out that you're going to be looking for. But you know, it's up to people what they want to choose. So 7/16 bolt on that too. So, and then you can adjust down, up, whatever you need to be able to get the light to shine where you need it to. So plenty of room for it. I want to set it right about there. And snug it up. So. We're going to mount this little side light. It's a little S1, I believe, from Baja. And it's we're putting an amber on it because, well, we have an amber. So. Let's see. So the side light for us on the bumper, now we know everybody doesn't want to throw a ditch light up on the side of their truck, rig, whatever. So we came up with this for the side lights to kind of give you another place to go. You still have that side lighting capability, but you don't have a light sticking up right there next to your A pillar. And this guy can go, you know, very adjustable all the way to the ground, all the way up. Works really well. Takes care of the need for a side light, and it stays inside your bumper so it's protected. All right, so we got the Badlands. We're going to get it out of the box. We have to take as we pull it out, oh my God, there's so much stuff in here. Got instructions, might need those. Guide to winching, definitely going to want that. Super huge sticker packy. Looks like we got controller cord, controller, big old hook, and a nice fair lead. And then there's the bulk of the problem right here. All right, so we got everything in the Badlands box all taken out. Everything's spread out on the table here. There is relocation stuff. If you choose to put your winch, your control box behind your grill, that's totally fine. So we're gonna go ahead and get this thing mounted in the bumper and get it all set. You're able to leave the control box on. There's room in the GXs and the GX460 for this to stay on top of the winch. So this is how we're gonna mount the winch into the bumper. All right, so to mount the winch, like I said before, we send the hardware along. You're gonna put our square nuts in there and just slide them into the little slots. They come on the winch. They're a little bit of a challenge to get the winch in position, but you're gonna have the same exact square nuts, whether you're using our hardware or theirs. It's just ours is standard American thread, whereas theirs is metric. That's why we don't want you using the metric stuff, because it won't intermix with the hardware we sent. You're gonna want to use ours because when you go to bolt the front face on, you get a nice countersunk hole. Everything fits the way it's supposed to. It all sits in there. And then you're gonna thread the fairlead bolts that we send into these 3/8 threaded holes here. So that's why we're asking you to use our hardware. Okay, let's see if we can get this monster up in this. So once you get it in there, you got your rope busted loose. Just slide that right out that front hole. You're gonna want that out there when you start working through. So use the 7/32 Allen wrench to tighten up these bolts. We prefer to do this part on something that's a little bit more automated, just because the size of the winch and everything you're moving around just makes it easier if you can pull a trigger versus trying to move a ratchet. So then this guy goes on the front. We just slide that through. Slide her on in. All right. Took me a minute, but I got her. All right, so the first one's in. It's a little loose. So at this point, we'll set this up in the air a little bit. These ones are a little easier because you can just reach through there and get them back where they gotta go. All right, so now we got adjustment in these holes. So that way, if you have any trouble lining up, like right here, you're gonna want to scoot the whole winch up just a tiny bit to avoid having that rope rubbing on the bumper. So before we start tightening anything, what we'll do, just reach your hand back there, snug that one up. So I lifted it up just a little bit on the back side. So now the winch is where it needs to be. Now before you put the fair lead on, you're gonna wanna snug these two down. So everything's snug. Bumper's bolted to the inside face. You got 3/8 thick material holding it in place, and everything's pulling off the face of the bumper instead of pulling off the bottom, and that keeps all the torque and the torsion from affecting how the bumper's fitted up and the amount of strength that it holds up against. So now that we got that part done, we'll grab the hardware for the fair lead. We'll get the fair lead bolted on. So the last thing we're gonna do is we're gonna mount this fair lead. Now all the fair leads, it doesn't matter if it's Badlands, Warren, Factor 55, moose knuckle, whoever it is that you're using, they're all gonna have the same width on that bolt point. So everything should work out just fine as long as what we're sending reaches. So here we have, and this is really all we need to go ahead and hold that fair lead on. The fair lead's not taking a bunch of force, it's just guiding the rope to keep it from rubbing on anything. We did thread these holes. Keep an eye, make sure your powder coater doesn't fill those things in. They want to definitely use a plug in there. If they do end up filling it in on you, possibly just run a thread chaser in it. But that's your fair lead going on. It covers up the bottom bolt. That's why we say to tighten everything down. Everything looks nice. Rope's gonna rub on the fair lead instead of the steel. It all works out great. This bumper's ready to install on a 460 now. So now that we have the bumper ready to go, the next step is gonna be installing it on the rig. That'll be, we'll get the vehicle in, we'll get the bumper cover off, we'll get the new bumper mounted to it, we'll make our cuts where we need to make our cuts on the plastic. I'll show you how to install the parking sensors. We're gonna have to, on the 460 has a turn signal in the lower bumper cover. So we're gonna add in LED dots to the 460 for a turn signal. A couple other little things that we're gonna mess around with, but that's our next step, is mounting this man's new bumper onto his 460 and seeing the smiles. That's what we're after. All right, so we got the bumper all prepped. We're ready to start working on the install. We have a donor vehicle here for the install. This has been used a little bit, so we know our bumper is gonna go play in the world. We're gonna start off with disconnecting the rubber lines, the squirt lines that go to the headlight squirters, disconnecting the turn signal harness, disconnecting the harness for the parking sensors. We're gonna obviously take his license plate off. And I think that pretty much kind of covers, we'll take this whole front clip off of here and we'll reference down we'll get our bumper mounted to it, and then we'll reference from this headlight to the top of our bumper to give us a nice cut line. So that way, even if I give you measurements, you can do the same thing yourself and get yourself a nice rough draft kind of cut, because you never know if your rig has a little bit maybe stiffer body mounts, sag body mounts, anything like that. You really want to go off of what your rig wants at the junction from the headlight to the cowl to the bumper. So that way you don't have any discrepancies. And always go long and then shorten up as you go, so that way you can get your gap the way you want it. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and disconnect the main harness that goes to the front fascia. So pretty simple, you just pop this little guy out. I like to use my trusty pocket knife. Maybe. Okay, so the little lever goes up and that pushes the plug apart when you push it all the way up. So this is a big multi-plug, and the further you pull, the more the little lever has to go. Okay. It's got some dirt in it. Yours might too. So this guy right here is gonna run everything from turn signals, fog lamps, parking sensors, all of it. So once you get this guy disconnected, you can pull the fascia off and you don't have to individually disconnect every single one of these. So that takes care of the electrical. And then we're gonna head up here, way up inside, and feel around, and we'll be able to get to this squirter for the headlight. But first thing we do before we disconnect the squirter, this is something we all learned the hard way, so I'm going to tell you, is we're gonna pinch off the line to keep it from leaking all over the ground. So the easiest way I found to do this is you come up here, you grab it with a pair of vice grips, and you pinch the flow off right at the washer bottle. So what's gonna go on is when you disconnect these rubber lines, you're gonna have washer fluid squirting out all over the ground around you. So you're basically gonna be sitting in a big mud puddle while you're trying to work on your bumper. So we'll reach way up in here to the back side of that little square. And then there's a clip that you push on and you disconnect it. I don't know if you can see it, but basically what you're doing is you're pushing on this guy right here and it unclips it from the back of the washer squirter. And then we'll do the other side, and now everything's disconnected from the bumper. We'll be able to take it off the truck. Okay, so I'm gonna push the button and then I'm gonna pull the little guy out and hopefully you can see it. So we got this little clip right here. This clip flexes and that's all that holds this thing in to the back of the squirter for the headlight. So we're gonna take out these two little screws here. A lot of this inner fender liner on this one is already tore up from going off-road, but you get the basic idea. We're disconnecting the front plastic from the inner plastic. So we'll go here, loosen up this wonderfully designed plastic screw here. Hold on. We're not going to reuse it, so it's okay. They don't really do much. So then once you got these guys out, it's a little bit aggressive, but what you're going to do is come in here, pop it loose. Pop that loose. Probably not Toyota spec there, but that's all we need because we're cutting it way up here, so those are gone anyways. All right, to the other side. We're gonna go ahead and take these two out. And then pop that out, and that gets us loose. This guy's already been removed right here. So that's where you start taking off, unclip all the way around. Now we go to the middle and get the top, and then there's about 10 plastic buttons and 4 bolts. Okay, so we're gonna show you the fog plug real quick, nice and up close so you can see it. So I'm gonna be hooking in one set of his lights to this fog circuit on the 460. So you come in here, you push this button, and you disconnect the fog. Now I've already removed it from the bumper, but this is to show you how it comes apart. This has to be unplugged and unhooked before you pull the bumper fascia off. Otherwise, there's a good chance you're gonna tear it on your way out. So fog circuit, and then main harness and squirties for your headlights. That's your pulls. So all these rigs have a little bit different. The one that I run is a base model. So I don't have these. I don't have any of the stuff for the 2023 where you have the TSS sensor in the front. So you kind of got to keep an eye as you're pulling this thing apart that you're not pulling on any wiring or anything. If you do have the TSS sensor and you have taken off the multi-plug, should be fine on that. But what I just ran into here was on the washer squirter hose, I'm running into the washer squirter hose where it attaches to the plastic. So I'm just going to go along and disconnect it under here to make sure that when I pull off the bumper, these ones are just friction. You got one up there. It's a zip tie. Now this section of the bumper is going to go away. So whatever you have to do to make your life easier, just pop this guy off. Well, last one. All right, so there's that. There's the blue stuff. Not too bad since we have it pinched off. Just whatever was in the line flows out of it. All right, I'll get this guy lowered back down. We'll get the fascia off of it. All right, so we're gonna be pulling off this black plastic piece. It's just a cover. Helps divert the air through your radiator a little bit. This little pry bar seems to be doing the trick. They do send, if you need more of these plastic things, you can go on Amazon or whatever, internet, order some of them. You just order a whole bag, and usually they'll send you a fork-shaped pry bar for them. I seem to have misplaced mine, though, so we're using this today. But you can use this, you can use a screwdriver, you can use a pocket knife as long as you don't stab yourself with it. So. Oh, one more. One more. There we go. All right, once you get this guy off, just kind of send it back there. Plastic clips go in it, so when you go to grab it, you can throw those all down over the engine. Next thing we're doing, we got 1, 2, 3, and 4 10mm bolts that hold the front of this thing on. These are the last bolts we're going to be pulling off now that the fender liners are already popped loose. So set that right there. So basically go right here. The best thing you could probably do here, make sure your sides are popped loose before you get your last one off. This side's obviously popped loose on this one. So it's kind of scary at first because you're yanking on your nice rig. Down in here, there's a button. It's nothing major. It's just where it kind of catches on it. So you just pull down just a tiny bit, and then that pops out of the holder. So at this point, I have one more bolt holding this thing on. It's going to be this one right here. And that's the last one for it. All right, so these little tabs right here, before you just yank on your grill, you're going to want to pop those up. That gives you a little bit of room. This one's already up, but yeah, if you leave those down and you start yanking, there's a good chance you're going to break something that you shouldn't. So just push them out just a little bit. We do have 3 bolts down in here that we have to get to. So you can kind of look from the top. There's one. Let's see if I can finagle this guy out of here. We have this one. Then your final one is this guy over here. That one decided to take a little trip. Be hiding out down inside the grill. Yep, got it. Magic. It's like a little trophy. So this will be number 4 right here. Same size. Everything's 10 millimeter. Makes it super easy. You're not switching around sockets the whole time. All right. So there it is. Your Lexus without a nose on it. So for ease of explanation, this stuff basically diverts from your grill through your radiator. We're gonna make the cut right up here. This one has an AC line going through, so we'll just make a cut horizontally right there. We'll make another one right here, and we'll pull off the bottom portion of this because we don't want it in the way when we put the new bumper on. So I'll go trusty pocket knife. So what you got is you got this plastic here, and you can run it with a Sawzall or whatever you want to use to cut with. Them little jitterbugs. I choose just to score it on both sides. Then hopefully if everything goes smooth, she just pops right off of there. The reason I don't like to use a power tool right here is you got all these AC lines hiding out. Got a lot going on. I don't want to end up turning this into a full-on replacing components and recharging an air conditioning system. So I just choose to break them, make a nice little mark on it, and then snap it off of there. So the reason I don't use power tools right here, we have everything from power steering line. On this side, we have an air conditioning line. So what I do is I put a little score on the plastic and get it ready. So once I unhook this from the side, so aggressive. So the score snapped. And that. So that leaves the top ones in. You still get your air diversion. You just need the bottom ones out of the way. That's pretty clean so far. All we need to do next is get the crash bar off and we can test fit our bumper on this thing. There's 2 ways to approach the crash bar. You try to get in here with a ratchet and play with these guys, but the easier way I found is to grab these nuts right off of these holes here and these holes here and get them out of your way. There's a couple right here in this. So you pull all these guys out of the way. You're using a 14 millimeter socket. Some of them are pretty tight. Some of them aren't so bad. All right, so that gets everything off the crash bar. You go ahead and pull that off. Same thing on these. You got 14 millimeter. Pull your standoffs. And hang on to these guys because you're going to need them. All right. 14 millimeter, you pop your standoff bolts out. All right, there we go. So there we go, we're ready. We can start working on getting our bumper fitted up, start getting our measurements down to where we're gonna make our cut on our body, and we'll be able to get this thing all put together. All right, so bumper we worked on, we got everything all set in it. We're ready to put it on the truck, try a test fit, see how everything goes. Should be pretty much a no-brainer, but while we have it on there, we're gonna go ahead and get our measurements from our headlights down to the tubes so that way we know where we're gonna make our cuts. So what we got on the GX 460, a lot like the 5th gen 4Runner, same frame, same platform. You have to screw your bolts into it. So it makes it really hard, especially if you're only 2 guys working on it or even 1 person working on it, to hold it in place while you get a bolt. So what I've done is take one of my bolts and I run it from the backside and I turn it into a stud. And that gives me something to kind of steady the bumper up while I'm lining up my other bolts. It also helps them line up a lot easier. Just makes your life a little bit more simple. Once you get the bumper on, you can pull the stud out, turn it around, and run it back through the other way. All right, just up just a little bit. So once you got the studs in, we'll set the bumper onto the studs. We'll get another bolt in place to hold it. And then ratcheting wrench or wobbly socket for the win on that. All right, just leave it a tiny bit loose. If we have to get any side to side. Okay. All right, so once you get the bumper on for your test fit, we did leave the control box on the Badlands winch. You'll see that right here, it's clearing the winch control box. So we're gonna run this one with the control box on the Badlands because of the size of the control box. You could probably do it with most of your other winches, but you do have a remote spot to be able to plug in or just turn on your Bluetooth. You can still reach through here, get to your handle, get to this, no problem. So this is your center support for your front fascia, and then you have your 2 other supports for your front fascia. So all that stuff, we're gonna leave it alone, no cuts, no nothing, because we want that support in behind the grill. Okay, so however, if you do put it in and you realize that the control box is interfering with this, we leave about a 1/4 inch of up-down adjustment in the winch mounting. You basically would take off your fair lead and then take these bolts, just loosen them up a little bit, and the winch will be able to drop down if you don't already have it drop down. Just keep an eye out to make sure that as your rope's coming across, your fair lead is catching the rope and it's not catching on any steel parts of the bumper that are going to fray it or cause it any problems. So then as we look over here, what we have is this black clip that holds the front fascia on the sides. It has just this little dip down right here that we're going to have to trim up a little bit. What we basically have going on is when we put the bumper on, we're going to leave a gap. You know, I know a lot of the guys aren't going to want to leave too much of a gap, so at least if you can give it about 3/8 of an inch, be ideal for the amount of body flex we're going to deal with. If you're a heavy off-roader, I personally would suggest about 1/2 to 5/8 of an inch. So we'll trim this back right here. So then we do create our gap on our plastic. This isn't going to be hanging down, rubbing on the top of the bumper and tearing the paint up. Also, if you want to recess this little piece of hard plastic right here, it's like a splash guard, just kind of give it a little recess cut around the back of the tube. So that way it's not back there rubbing all your powder coating off while you're driving all the time. Since we're doing the test fit right now, we're going to want to get our measurements for where we're going to cut our plastic at. So we're going to start off with a reference point. Let's call it, let's say 7 inches from this seam right here. I'm going to make a mark, okay? That way we can make the same mark on the other side. And then right here, we'll take a measurement. And this is just going to be a distance measurement. Right now you're sitting at 2 inches. I'm going to go to 1 3/4 right here on the tape measure off the plastic over there. When we have it on here without the bumper on, I'll be able to measure 1 3/4 from here to my mark. And then that's my start point to start pulling around the bumper. The last spot we'll go is going to be right in here. And let's say we go 6 1/4 inches from the backside of the tube there to the very tip of this headlight. So 6 1/4, 6 1/2, and then 1 1/4 right here, or 1 3/4. Correct myself there. So 1 3/4. And that'll give us a good solid line to be able to make our cut. We'll fit the plastic with it cut. We'll fit the bumper. If we don't like the way the line looks, we'll still be super tight to the tubing, and we'll be able to make adjustments from there for a final cut. All right, so we're gonna pull the bumper off now. We're gonna get this trimmed up so that we're not rubbing right here. We'll get this little guy trimmed back so that we're not rubbing on the back side of it. And then we'll get our fascia on. We'll make our cut line around and then get everything cut and then put the bumper back on for a final fit up before we get our rough draft line. So we'll have one more cut to make after the bumper goes on again, but it'll give us our perfect line all the way around to where we don't have any large gaps or wavy lines or anything like that. Okay, so first thing I'll do, I'm going to recess this little area right here just a little bit. Doesn't have to be super specific, just getting it trimmed back a little bit to get it away from the side of the tube. And then you got this spot right here. And that gives you some clearance under the tube right there. And I'll go do the other side. All right. So that takes care of those two interference spots. That way, once we get our bumper back on, we're not dealing with those spots holding us up on anything. All right, so I'm going to pull these sensors off. You just got to spread this out a little bit. Maybe push on it with your finger from the backside, especially if yours is all full of Moab dust. So as we go along, we got that clip right there. And then you should be able to just unscrew your turn signals. So there's your turn signal. Now I don't need to reuse any of these clips. So I'm just gonna start getting all this stuff out of the way right now. So that way I'm not fighting with it. Same thing goes. So this one's got a squeeze on one side and a push on the other. They're getting all tricky. All right, so that brings that out. We'll go to the next one. And of course, on this one, I went ahead and reversed it. Squeeze on one side, push on the opposite. Comes out. So this is your squeeze side. This push side stays hiding out inside of there, okay? It's a little bit of a pain, but not too bad. So then pop that. All that's loose. We'll backtrack here. All right. Working our way along the harness. Same thing goes on these ones. Push from the back with your finger, and that should pop right out of there. You see how that clip goes? So you're trying to spread these to get them off of there. See that? But yeah, pushing on this side with your finger through the hole seems to be the easiest way to do it, so you're not fighting with it too bad. And then these guys, just same thing. You just unscrew them. And the good news is what I did was I created grommets that hold all these sensors versus using this. So once we get you all set up, every sensor will go into a grommet, and then we have stationary 3M brackets that will hold the sensor from moving around once it's in the grommet. We'll show you how to do those. All right, so we got these little 3M squares for your parking sensors. We got a grommet right here. The grommet, the parking sensor goes into the grommet. The 3M square goes on the back of here. So you're going to zip tie this guy right here, right to the harness. Nice and tight. So that's going to be the fixture point to hold the parking sensor in place. So then as you come in, these guys just barely slide into this little area. So you're coming in between the bar and the bracket for the lights. You just slide right on down this line here. Get this guy situated in its spot. Goes through. Square grommet goes on it. She's stuck there. Holds up real nice. As we go along, we just keep the wiring up out of the way. You can zip tie it back to these, nice and easy. Right there. And then we work our way down. So now you have, as you come along, have a turn signal here. So we're going to send you 5 per side LED dots. And I'll show you how those go on after the bumper goes in place. But this will be, prep this ahead of time. So that way you're not trying to reach around where you can't see to get this off. But basically, you're going to wire up the dots to this wiring. And I'll warn you ahead of time, I am not an electrician. So if you have a better way to do this, feel free. Don't be sad. if my method is not up to your standard. I like building bumpers. I don't like doing wiring though. So this is just going to get cut off here. All right. So just for reference, on a Toyota, the white wire with the black line on it's always going to be your ground. You can look on your cowls and look around at other grounds. You're always going to find huge bundles of these little white wires with the black line screwed off to either your fender, your engine, your fuse block, all that stuff. So when you're working on this, you're going to see those grounds. But yeah, this one's your ground, this one's your power for your turn signal. One side's yellow. I'm going to go ahead and guess. The other side's probably going to be green. All right, so I just leave those alone for now. They're prepped. I don't have to mess with them while I'm putting the bumper on. So then we have another zip tie here. All right, so what I'm going to have you do, this interferes with the back side of the grommet. This is your old clip to hold it in your old bumper. This was also the clip. So if you ever decide to go back the other direction, you still got one clip. But we're going to get rid of that guy. And what we're going to do is once we go into the grommet, we peel the tape off. So it's sticky. And then we go in with it horizontal to the top. All right, so that's it right in there. We'll get you a shot of the back of it so you can kind of take a look at how it sits in there, where the little sticky tab lands, how everything kind of works. We've been testing this for a while, so we are sure these guys are going to hold up for a little while. Obviously, it's test of time. You can feel free to reach out to us and say if you have any issues, but I feel like this takes care of the problem as far as holding the wiring in place and everything. So if you have a bumper, if you have a 2020 to 2023 GX460, right here in this harness, there's going to be a plug for your TSS sensor. So what we've done is, and I'll show you as we get further in the video, we basically take through the support from the stock support and we punch a little 1-inch hole with a drill bit and we just run that straight up through it, and that takes care of being able to plug right into the TSS sensor without the fact that the wiring harness is obviously in a different spot than it was before. So we'll just leave that sitting right there for the moment, and as we get closer to the end, we'll go ahead and secure that out of the way so the winch rope doesn't hit it. All right, so this one I'll prep ahead of time. Got a good feel for it. All right, so this guy goes, watch your eyes. Just kind of back your hand up with the grommet, so that way you're not shoving it out the other side. And then make sure she stays nice and stuck in there. Just make sure you're dipping down through this area right here. You don't want to be coming in behind and having it stick on you, cause you any problems. Okay, same thing, turn signal. Oh, I got it right, it was green. Don't throw it on the ground. Okay. So I don't know if you caught that while I was putting it on. Just kind of tilt it in like this a little bit. And then you can set it on these brackets inside of here. And then you can work on getting the plastic back into the position you want it in. If you try to do plastic first, it's going to fight you the whole way. Makes it really hard. Nice and easy, no rough shape. Okay. Okay, so earlier we did put a mark right here, measured down. We measured down from this 1 3/4. So that's our 1 3/4 mark. That's where our line going around is going to start. This one was our 6 1/2 mark that we had. And that's at 7 inches from here over to that line we had made. Six and a quarter. Okay, so I got 6 1/4, 6 1/2, and 1 3/4. So what we did was we have to measure down from here, 6 1/4. From here, let's see, we go back to our reference. So from here we go This is our 6.5 measurement. We had a 1 1/4 measurement, 1 3/4, a 1 3/4 measurement right there. And then we had a 6 1/4, because we were straight on it, and this one is obviously a little bit crooked. So we're just going to try to err on the side of caution. So it's always important to measure multiple times, but what's most important is leave more hanging down here than you think you're going to need, and test fit and see if everything goes the way you want, and then you can trim off more if you need to. But basically what we're doing is the bottom of the metal bracket that holds the grill is right behind here. So we're going along the top of this line where this centerpiece is on these older ones. On the newer ones, you're going to be at the bottom of a piece of grid. I can show you that later. But we're going to go 2 1/4 down from this body line right here. And that should leave us a good 1/2 inch extra hanging down. So then once we do our line, fit our bumper up, make sure we like the way it looks, we'll be able to come back and trim that up. I just rather trim it up after the fact than find out we went too far and we can't fix it. We have to buy another front. Okay, so we're gonna throw some masking tape. Nice thick stuff. Stays pretty straight. I'm gonna go ahead and angle that down a little bit because I want to be able to get as much of that in the body line as I can with the bumper. So that's where I'm starting with. That's my rough cut. I'll get the other side going. All right, so same thing. Follow our lines. And then a little downward tilt right there. So hopefully that is a good, clean, easy cut. So I'm gonna go ahead and start making this cut here. You know, a lot of people use the jiggle cutters. What are those things called? The little vibrating saws. I think that's probably a better option than what I use, but I'm so used to these things, been using them forever, I use a cutoff wheel. There's that. We are going to, let's see, we'll nip right across there. Like I said, I left some extra there. Just mess around with it. That gets us through all that. I'll do this side next. So at this point, I got to get, there's double layer on this year where this is. So I have to get back to cut the second layer behind it. On the newer ones, it's not double layered. It just has, and it's actually not that bad. It has a thin, like just pieces of grill hanging out. So it's a lot easier to make the cut. So I'm gonna go along here, open up a compartment that I can get into, and then cut the backside. Okay. So I'm thinking best way to handle this, probably Sawzall, or pull it off, flip it over, and do it from the backside probably, huh? Okay. So with this model, this older style grill, and it's something I had forgotten, but there's a double layer to the grill right in the area where we're cutting. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come off of the back side of it versus the front because it's got some depth to it, about 2 inches. And I'm just gonna make my cut along the back side here to finish off cutting the lower part of the grill off of it. Instead of trying to reach through or come up with another way to cut it, it's pretty quick. It's already unbolted anyways. Might as well just finish it from the back. So all I did was I just followed the line along the bottom of this bracket here and just cut all the way along the back side of this. That way I could get the second layer cut loose. And then the last thing is just connect it all together. Okay. Let's see what we got. Oh, that got it. There we go. Just gonna roll it this way. Take a look. It's pretty close. That's its old one. Okay, we got what's left of a grill now. All right, so we're gonna set this thing back up on here. Same thing goes. Tilt it out a little. Roll it into position. Catch that. Catch that. Starting to look like a bumper cut. Just in case we're rustling it around too much, I'm gonna throw a couple screws in up here, and that'll kind of prevent anything from going wrong and knocking it off while we're working. So everything down here looks like it's lined up pretty nice. Let's see. I'm gonna throw this center support screw in, so that'll hold everything still while we're doing our test fit. We don't end up with some weird measurements that we don't back up once it's all put back together again. So once we get the bumper on the studs that we put out from the backside at the beginning, we basically start sending in all the rest of the bolts, because we want this thing completely situated and bolted onto the truck before we start messing around with any kind of cut lines. So if we just loose fit it up here and then we start messing with cut lines, then all of a sudden what we'll run into is we're going to have cut lines that are in a different spot than where the bumper wants to be, because once we tighten it completely, it's going to change. So unfortunately, tighten everything up, get your cut lines nice and situated, and then go back, pull the bumper back off, do your final cut, and then put it back on, and you should be finished at that point, getting the bumper on at least. After that, we do skid plates, and then we'll show you how to get the turn signals installed. And I might be able to do this with it right on the truck too, just to make it a little easier. I'll start right there. Okay, so At this point, the front cut looks pretty good where it is, so I'm not stressing on that too much. So what I'm doing is getting myself a gap along the back edge. To be able to cut, to give myself a little bit of clearance along. So basically just this side right here, we'll get some clearance on that. This side over here, we'll get some clearance on that. This one actually ended up a lot more into it. I'm assuming has something to do with our plastic right here. So we'll get some clearance on both of those and then revisit real quick and see where we're at. Looks nice. All right, since we're here, I'm gonna clean up these edges a little. All right, I got all the edges smoothed out the way I want them. If our fit up goes nice, this stays on. We move forward. So what I did here was I'm going to put in holes for LED dots for the turn signal. And the plan here is to 3/4 inch holes. We're going to have 5 of them here. And what we're hoping is the LED dots with 5 of them is going to give enough resistance so the turn signal flashes like a normal turn signal would instead of rapid flash. So basically I went 2.5 inches over to this line from this spot right here. And then every 2 inches along, made another mark, and then 1.5 inches down from this line, right along here, to each mark. So that way the dots are gonna match the profile of this line here to give it a little bit more of a cool look. So we'll get that all drilled out, get the dots in, and see if we can't get them wired up. Make sure which one we're on. One more step. Okay, so we'll make a mark so we can see it. I should be able to see that as it comes around, I hope. Okay. All right. There's all 10 holes. So I'll prep all these real quick. So I'm just stripping off a little extra wire just to make sure once it's back there, I'm not fighting trying to get in there to get to the wire. So yeah, give it some room. And like I said, I'm no electrician, so if you feel like you have a better idea on these signals, feel free and share with us too if you think there's a better way to do it, because some people will definitely come up with solutions that we won't. With the kit, with the bumper, we're gonna send you some of these grommets. These are gray, but they actually flash yellow. And so what we'll do is we cut out these 5 holes to 3/4 of an inch with our step bit. And then we go ahead and stick those little fellas right in there like that and slide that in. Now I like to keep the serrations pointed the same, just aesthetics, you know. But this is basically what we're ending up with for a turn signal. Now there's plenty of other options. You can use one of your pod mounts as a turn signal if you want. You can use dots in other places on the bumper if you want. You can use dots in other places on the plastic. But this is what we think kind of matches the kind of general look on the vehicle. Seems to work pretty well. So this is what we came up with. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and stick these grommets in. They're pretty soft. They got a nice shoulder to them, so they don't mind going into this thicker plastic. Look at them, they got a nice thick shoulder. So that way when you're sticking them into this 1/8 inch thick plastic, they're not really noticing. All right. So I'm gonna do the same thing. Little serrations go to the sky. I'm just pretty much putting them straight up and down. It really probably doesn't matter, but I just like the way they look that way. Okay. Okay, so I got the multi-plug here. I'm gonna go ahead and get that set up. So if you look on the plug, there's a little notch on the white part there. You just want to make sure that's lining up. You don't want to force anything, do anything. It's a very expensive plug. You don't want to have to replace it. And then you just click it down into place. But you see that same little notch? It follows all the way up there and locks it in. Okay. So then what I need to do here real quick is I'm gonna have to test ground and, let's see. Let's do ground and power. It looks like for your ground side, which is your white wire coming from the truck with the black stripe, you're gonna hook it to the white wire on the LED. And then for your other one, you're gonna go the yellow wire to the black wire. And then on the other side of the truck, you're gonna go the black wire to the green wire. And that's the only difference. Driver's side is yellow, passenger side is green. Those both hook into the black wires. So what I basically did was, and like I said, I'm no wiring genius, but what I did was I have five LEDs. So I took 3 from one side and 3 from the other and connected them. So that way I have an equal connection in the middle. And then I'm just over here shrink wrapping them on. This is a marine grade shrink wrap that I'm using. Most hardware stores should have it. Auto parts stores, things like that. So if this is the way you choose to roll with it, I would suggest some good high quality connectors and then some good marine grade shrink wrap, and should give you no problems. So I got the squirter here. I'm gonna hook it back up to the headlight squirter. So just basically just push them on. We'll go to the other side and let's push that guy on right there. So that's done. And then the only thing I got left over here is going to be the fogs. That's basically a 2-wire connection to a 2-wire connection. Should be good to go. So I'll put the plug on from Baja that's sent with the lights, and then that should take care of making that all work the way it should. So we're basically going to take out that one stud that we used to line up the bumper and move it back around to the front. So that way, obviously, it'll hold and do its job. Okay. So we're just basically finishing up. Make sure everything we've done is tight. I think I should get to that one from the top. There's a better way to do that one. This will be all the bumper bolts mounted. Pull out that other stud. Okay. Those are all tight. For the side frame brackets, we pull out this, scoot that away a little bit. Side frame bracket's gonna go right in between there. So we use this hole and then this hole here. We send hardware for these. So you shouldn't have to use the stock stuff. If you want to use our stuff, you'll be better off. So this is our metric bolt for the side frame. And then, so it'll be these two with a large flat washer and a small flat washer. So your smaller one goes on the top, larger one goes on the bottom. The bottom hole's never been used for anything, so expect it to be a little bit dirty in there. If you feel like you need to clean it out, maybe some WD-40 in there or something like that might help. Okay, we got one there. I'll just start snugging everything up. So I'm just gonna get them all kind of snug to start off with. So that way, if anything has to self-correct, it's not gonna be a problem for it. So there's your first side frame bracket, all connected, large bolt, little bolt, and then your 2, 3, or 9/16 head bolt. So you got 19 millimeter, 13 millimeter, 14 millimeter. So here's the passenger side. Oh my God. Like I said, leave them just a little bit loose, because when you're tightening everything, It's all going to self-correct. So if you over tighten anything first, it's going to be really hard for a self-correct. But there's plenty of slot, plenty of room for adjustment. So that's why we kind of let it go where it wants to go, you know. All right, so that's your side frame brackets. We're gonna go ahead and put the skid on. So this guy has RSG skid plate. We're gonna have to drop these 4 front bolts because our skid sandwiches in between here. Normally, you're gonna see a bracket right here, and we'll include a picture of that in the video. But that bracket would normally be where your bolt will go through and sandwich your skid tab. So we'll make sure you have a good picture of how that looks. So when you're going to do it, you understand from a stock standpoint how it's going to look for you. All right, so our skid uses this bolt hole and this bolt hole, and it goes between there to attach. So before we start putting our skid on, we're gonna loosen all these guys up. Hopefully no surprises. There was a surprise. And another surprise. So there's surprises. Let's see. All right, so skid's going on. We basically put our skid between the stock brackets and the frame. And what we do here, so these Allen bolts are a 3/16 Allen. And the reason I have a long one, it's definitely suggested, is because of this guy right here. What happens is you get too far up, a shorter one will shank out on the side of the skid and chip your powder coating off. So I run the longer one, try and make it a little less abusive. Bolt through the skid. Okay, so there's all those. I'm going to cut the fender liner off a little bit. I'm just going to kind of follow the radiator support once I get down a little. So that right there, it's kind of small, but there wasn't a lot left of it. So we're going to work with what we got. Ideally, you should be going all the way down to here with your plastic, and then you can run a tie through to hold it up so it doesn't start flopping around on stuff. And the same thing goes on this side. Not much of it left. We're going to work with what we got. Cut that off. That should be good. And then I'll find a good spot to tie that up so that it stays out of the way. So that concludes our install with this vehicle. If you have any questions before you do the install or while you're doing the install, feel free to call us, text us, email us. Those are the best channels to reach out to us with. If you want to send us pictures of where you're running into an issue, we're more than happy to answer those questions. And we just want you to know that we really appreciate you buying our products, and we would absolutely love to see any pictures of your final product, of your rig. If you want to share them on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok even, we have those accounts also. Anywhere you'd like to show off this stuff, we love seeing it. And we will probably honk at you if we see you out on the highway. Good chance. Thank you.